Millionaire sees homeless twin girls, then notices a ring, the same one he gave to his first love. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The December air bit through Blake Whitaker's expensive coat as he exited Westfield Mall, his phone pressed to his ear. Another successful deal closed. Another building added to his ever-expanding empire. "I need those contracts finalized by tomorrow," he instructed his legal team while checking his watch. The chauffeur was late again. A small voice cut through the busy street noise. "Sir, please help us." Blake nearly walked past, as did every other shopper laden with luxury purchases, but something in that voice made him pause. Two little girls, no more than 8 years old, huddled together on the sidewalk. Identical twins with honey blonde hair and eyes too serious for their age. "Our mom's really sick," the bolder one explained, holding out a small paper cup. "We need money for her. Medicine." Blake had seen this before. Children used as sympathy props. Yet something felt different. The girls were clean despite their worn clothes, their posture dignified despite their situation. "Where's your mother now?" he asked, reaching for his wallet. "Hospital," the quieter twin whispered. "She's been there 3 days. As Blake dropped a $50 bill into their cup, a glint of silver caught his eye. The first girl wore a delicate ring, a silver band with a small sapphire nestled between 2 tiny diamonds. His heart stopped. He knew that ring. "That's a pretty ring," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Where did you get it?" "It's Mom's," she replied, instinctively protective. "I'm Harper. This is Piper." "And your mom's name?" Blake asked, though somehow, impossibly, he already knew. "Madeline," Harper answered. Madeline Reed. The world around Blake seemed to blur, the bustling sidewalk fading away. Madeline, the woman who'd vanished from his life 10 years ago without a word. His first love. "Which hospital?" he asked, his voice barely audible as memories crashed over him like waves. Blake's driver pulled up to the curb, concern crossing his face as he watched his boss kneel before 2 homeless children. "Mr. Whitaker, is everything all right?" Blake stood, his mind racing. "Change of plans, Aaron. We're taking these girls for food." 30 minutes later, in a warm diner, Blake watched Harper and Piper devour cheeseburgers like they hadn't eaten in days. Perhaps they hadn't. "The doctors say Mom needs an operation," Harper explained between bites. "But we don't have insurance." "How long have you been living?" Blake hesitated. "In your situation?" Piper, the quieter twin, shrugged. "Always, I guess, but it got worse when Mom got sick." Blake's chest tightened. While he'd been building skyscrapers and amassing wealth, Madeline had been struggling on the streets with their daughters. They had to be his. The timing, their age, those familiar eyes that mirrored his own mother's. "We used to have an apartment," Harper continued. "Mom worked 3 jobs, but then she started getting tired all the time and then really sick. She taught us to be invisible," Piper added softly. "To not bother people. But when she went to the hospital, we had to do something." Blake's phone buzzed incessantly, Warren, his personal assistant, questioning his whereabouts. The quarterly board meeting would start in 20 minutes. For the first time in his career, Blake didn't care. "I'd like to visit your mother," he said. "Would that be okay?" The girls exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "Why?" Harper asked, suddenly suspicious. "Do you know our mom?" "I did, a long time ago," Blake admitted. "Before you were born." Harper's hand instinctively went to the silver ring. "She cries sometimes when she looks at this ring, says it's from before everything went wrong." Blake swallowed hard. What had happened? The Madeline he knew had been full of dreams and laughter, studying architecture with plans to design homes that would bring families together. Now her daughters were begging on street corners while she fought for her life in a hospital bed. "I think I can help your mom," Blake said, "if you'll let me." "We don't take charity," Harper said with a pride that seemed both heartbreaking and familiar. "Mom says we have to make our own way." It's not charity, Blake replied, a decade of questions burning in his throat. Consider it a debt I'm repaying. As they left the diner, Warren's silver Mercedes screeched to a halt beside them. Blake! Warren stepped out, his expression a mix of irritation and disbelief as he eyed the twins. The board is waiting. What are you doing with these? Children? Blake placed protective hands on the girl's shoulders. Something I should have done 10 years ago. The county hospital corridor smelled of industrial disinfectant and despair. Blake, who normally wouldn't set foot in such establishments, felt out of place in his $3,000 suit as he followed the twins through narrow hallways. Mom's in here, Harper whispered, stopping outside room 412. She looks different now. The medicines make her really tired. Blake steeled himself, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight of Madeline Reed. The vibrant, beautiful woman who once filled his dreams now lay pale and thin against sterile white sheets, her honey blonde hair, so like her daughter's, limp around her hollow face. Mom? Piper approached gently. We brought someone. Madeline's eyes fluttered, open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with maternal concern. Girls, what have I told you about talking to? Her words died when she saw Blake. 10 years dissolved in an instant. Blake? Her voice cracked, barely audible. Is that really you? He moved closer, heart hammering. It's me, Maddie. You shouldn't be here, she whispered, trying to sit up before wincing in pain. Please, you need to go. Mom, he wants to help, Harper insisted, clutching the silver ring on her finger. He knew about your ring. Madeline's eyes darted to the ring, then back to Blake's face, panic rising. Girls, please wait outside for a moment. The twins reluctantly obeyed, leaving the former lovers alone with 10 years of silence between them. Why didn't you tell me? Blake asked, his voice raw with emotion. They're mine, aren't they? Tears welled in Madeline's eyes. How did you find us? I was leaving the mall and they were there, asking for money. Harper was wearing your ring, my grandmother's ring. Blake ran a hand through his hair. God, Maddie, I've spent a decade wondering what happened to you, why you disappeared. You wouldn't understand, she whispered, looking away. Your father. What about my father? Before she could answer, a nurse entered with medication. Sorry to interrupt, but it's time for your treatment, Ms. Reed. Madeline seemed almost relieved by the interruption. Blake, please, just go. The girls and I have managed this long. We'll be fine. You're not fine, Blake argued, gesturing to the medical equipment surrounding her. What's wrong? What are they treating you for? Heart failure, the nurse answered matter-of-factly, checking Madeline's charts. She needs a valve replacement, but I'll pay for everything, Blake interrupted. Whatever she needs. No. Madeline's objection was fierce despite her weakness. I don't want your money, Blake. I never did. The nurse looked uncomfortably between them before excusing herself. Why are you being so stubborn? Blake demanded. Let me help you. Help our daughters. Madeline's eyes flashed with unexpected fire. Our daughters? You don't know the first thing about them. Where were you when they took their first steps, when they had nightmares, when we were evicted 3 times in 1 year? I didn't know they existed. Blake's composure finally cracked. If I had known, everything would have been different. Madeline turned away, tears streaming down her cheeks. Go ask your father about that. Blake found the twins huddled on plastic chairs outside their mother's room, their small faces drawn with worry that no child should have to carry. Is Mom okay? Piper asked, her voice barely audible. Blake knelt before them, searching their faces. His, mother's eyes, Madeline's delicate features, unmistakable echoes of himself in their expressions. How had he not seen it immediately? Your mom needs rest, he explained gently. But I'd like to help you both while she gets better. Harper's eyes narrowed with suspicion beyond her years. Why would you help us? Nobody just helps. The harsh truth in her words stabbed at Blake's conscience. These children had learned far too young that the world was cruel, and kindness came with conditions. Sometimes people do, Blake said, though he understood their skepticism. I care. About your mother, we were very close once. Were you her boyfriend? Harper asked bluntly. Blake hesitated. Yes. A long time ago. Then why didn't you stay? Piper's question was soft but cut deeper than her sister's directness. Before Blake could formulate an answer, Warren appeared at the end of the hallway, his expression a mixture of irritation and concern. Blake, this has gone far enough, Warren said, approaching with measured steps. The board is furious. Your father is asking questions. You've missed 3 critical meetings. Not now, Warren, Blake warned. Warren lowered his voice. Do you have any idea what you're getting yourself into? These people could be anyone. This woman could be... This woman's name is Madeline, Blake interrupted coldly. And these are her daughters, Harper and Piper. Warren's gaze shifted calculatingly to the girls. Blake, there are 1,000 sob stories in this city. Don't let yourself be manipulated by... That's enough. Blake silenced him with unexpected force. These children haven't eaten properly in days. Their mother needs heart surgery. I'm not having this discussion. Warren's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing something darker underneath before he composed himself. Of course. I apologize. How can I help? Blake didn't miss the insincerity, but pragmatism won out. Find them temporary accommodation near the hospital. Clothes, food, whatever they need. What about your father's dinner tonight, the Japanese investors? Cancel it, Blake said, already turning his attention back to the twins. I'll be staying here. After Warren reluctantly departed, Blake noticed Harper staring at him intently. Mom always said we should be careful of men in nice suits, she said. She said they make promises they don't keep. Blake felt the weight of those words. Your mother is a very smart woman, but I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. That's what they all say, Harper replied, twisting the silver ring on her finger, a nervous habit she'd clearly developed. But people leave. They always do. In that moment, Blake made a silent promise to these children who had his blood, but not his name. He would prove them wrong, even if it meant dismantling everything he'd built. When a doctor emerged from Madeline's room with a concerned expression, Blake knew the battle was just beginning. The first rays of dawn filtered through the hospital blinds when Blake awoke, his neck stiff from sleeping in the visitor's chair beside Madeline's bed. The twins were curled together on a small cot in the corner, a sight that twisted his heart. Doctor. Sharma had been blunt the previous evening. Ms. Reed needs a valve replacement. Without surgery, her condition will deteriorate rapidly. When Blake had immediately offered to pay, the doctor added, the procedure is complex. She should be transferred to Memorial Heart Center where they specialize in these cases. Now Blake watched Madeline's chest rise and fall with labored breaths. How had they reached this point? The brightest student in architecture school reduced to homelessness while he built an empire of glass and steel. His phone vibrated, a text from Warren. Arrangements complete. Presidential suite at the Archer Hotel. Staff aware of situation. Your father demands an explanation. Blake pocketed his phone as Madeline stirred. You're still here, she murmured, her voice rough with sleep and medication. I told you I'm not leaving. Blake leaned forward. Dr. Sharma explained about the surgery. I've arranged for your transfer to Memorial. Madeline attempted to sit up, wincing. I can't accept that. It's too much. Would you rather leave these girls without a mother? Blake's voice was sharper than intended, softening when he added, Please, Maddie. Not for me, for them. Her eyes drifted to her sleeping daughters. They've already suffered too much because of my choices. Our choices, Blake corrected gently. I should have looked for you harder. A nurse entered with medication, interrupting their moment. As Madeline took her pills, Blake stepped into the hallway to call Warren. Everything's prepared at Memorial, Warren reported efficiently. But there's something you should know. Your father is on his way to the hospital. Blake's grip tightened on his phone. How did he find out where I am? I didn't tell him, Warren said defensively. He has his ways, you know that. Ending the call, Blake returned to find the twins awake, Harper watching him with those two perceptive eyes. Something's wrong, she stated rather than asked. Before Blake could respond, the unmistakable sound of Victor Whitaker's authoritative voice echoed down the hallway. My son is here. I demand to see him immediately. Blake closed his eyes briefly, then faced the twins. That's my father. I need to speak with him. Stay with your mother, okay? In the corridor, Victor Whitaker stood impeccably dressed in a bespoke suit, his silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. At 65, he still commanded every room with the force of his personality. What the hell do you think you're doing? Victor demanded without preamble. Abandoning your responsibilities for what exactly? Not here. Blake guided his father to a small waiting area. This is a hospital. Victor's eyes narrowed. Warren. Tells me you've been with some woman and her children. What game are you playing? It's Madeline Reed, Blake said simply. The color drained from Victor's face, the only time Blake had ever seen his father genuinely shocked. That's impossible, Victor whispered. She's gone. She never left the city, Blake replied coldly. She's been raising my daughters in poverty while we built luxury condos. Victor's expression hardened. You don't know they're yours. I know, Blake said with absolute certainty, and I think you've known all along. Victor Whitaker paced the small waiting area, his composure cracking, something Blake had witnessed perhaps twice in his lifetime. This is absurd, Victor finally said. You're throwing away everything for a decade-old infatuation? The Kingston merger is next week. The board expects— Stop, Blake interrupted. Madeline is having heart surgery. My daughters have been homeless. Nothing else matters, right? Now Victor's eyes flashed dangerously. Your daughters? You have no proof those children are yours. I don't need a DNA test to see myself in their faces, Blake countered. What did you do, Dad? Madeline said to ask you why she disappeared. The hospital intercom announced visiting hours, filling the momentary silence between them. I protected you, Victor finally admitted, his voice low. You were 22 with a brilliant future. That girl was a distraction. A distraction? Blake repeated incredulously. We were together for 3 years. She came to me, Victor continued, adjusting his gold cufflinks. A nervous tell Blake recognized from board meetings. Said she was pregnant, wanted money. I gave her enough to start fresh somewhere else. Blake felt physically ill. You paid her to disappear. I offered her a choice, Victor corrected coldly. Leave you to your future, or watch you throw it away. On fatherhood before you'd even begun your career. That wasn't your decision to make. Blake's voice shook with rage. You had no right. I had every right to protect my son and this family's legacy, Victor snapped. That girl was nothing. No family connections, no fortune, just another gold digger. Her name is Madeline, Blake said through clenched teeth. And apparently she didn't take your money, or she wouldn't have been raising my children in poverty. Victor's expression faltered slightly. She took enough for a bus ticket. I assumed she'd left town. Well, she didn't, Blake said. She stayed and suffered, too proud to use whatever pittance you offered. A nurse approached hesitantly. Mr. Whitaker, Ms. Reed is asking for you. Blake turned away from his father. We're done here. If you walk away now, Victor warned, there's no coming back. The board will never accept— I don't care, Blake said with finality. Find someone else to build your legacy. He found Madeline sitting up in bed, looking stronger than the previous day. The twins sat close, Harper still protectively wearing the silver ring. Your father is here, Madeline said quietly. I heard his voice. Blake sat beside her bed. He told me what happened. Not everything, Madeline replied. He said if I stayed, he would destroy your future, that I was holding you back. Harper's small hand slipped into her mother's. Who is that man, Mom? Madeline's eyes never left Blake's. That's your grandfather, sweetie. We have a grandfather? Piper asked, her quiet voice filled with wonder. Not one worth knowing. Blake muttered. Don't, Madeline warned softly. Don't turn them against family, even him. They have too little of it already. Blake was struck by her generosity after everything she'd endured. The ambulance will transfer you to Memorial this afternoon. The girls will stay at a hotel nearby. I want to stay with Mom, Harper protested immediately. You will, Blake assured her. But you'll have a proper place to sleep, with real beds and hot meals. What about you? Madeline asked, surprising him. Where will you be? Their eyes met, a decade of loss suspended between them. Wherever you need me, he answered simply. The presidential suite at the Archer Hotel was larger than the entire apartment the girls had shared with their mother. Harper stood frozen in the doorway, her suspicious gaze taking in the plush carpets, massive television, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Is this really where we're staying? Piper whispered, clutching her small backpack. Their only possession besides the clothes Warren had hastily purchased. For now, Blake confirmed, watching their reactions carefully. The hospital is just across the street. Harper approached the window cautiously, pressing her palm against the glass. We can see Mom from here? Not exactly, Blake admitted. But we're close if she needs us. Warren entered, tablet in hand. The transfer to Memorial is complete. Ms. Reed's surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I've arranged for a private nurse to stay with her tonight. Blake nodded his thanks. Warren had been surprisingly efficient despite his obvious disapproval of the situation. Girls, why don't you explore while I speak with Mr. Warren? Blake suggested. Once the twins disappeared into the bedroom, Blake lowered his voice. Any news on my father's reaction? Warren's expression remained carefully neutral. He's called an emergency board meeting, discussing succession planning apparently. That was fast, Blake remarked, though not surprised. There's something else. Warren hesitated. I took the liberty of running a background check on Ms. Reed. Blake's jaw tightened. I didn't authorize that. As your personal assistant, I'm paid to protect your interests. Warren replied smoothly. There's a man named Ryan Lewis who shows up in her past. Multiple complaints of harassment, though she never pressed charges. Who is he? Ex-boyfriend, from what I gather. Came into the picture after she had the twins. Police reports suggest he was unstable. A cold feeling settled in Blake's stomach. Where is he now? Unknown. Released from prison 8 months ago after an assault conviction. Warren placed the tablet on the coffee table. I thought you should know. After Warren left, Blake found the twins in the massive bathtub, bubbles up to their chins, probably their first proper bath in weeks. Is Mr. Warren your friend? Harper asked, her wet hair plastered to her forehead. Blake considered the question. He works for me. He doesn't like us, Harper stated matter-of-factly. He looks at us like we're going to steal something. Blake frowned. Don't worry about Warren. He's just protective. Mom had a boyfriend like that once, Piper said quietly. Ryan. He was nice at first, then got mean. He said we weren't good enough for nice things. Blake's hands clenched involuntarily. Your mom never mentioned him. She doesn't like talking about him, Harper explained. He made her cry a lot. Then one day he was gone, and we moved to a different place. He won't bother you again, Blake promised, though he had no right to make such guarantees. Later, while the girls slept in the king-sized bed, Blake sat in the darkened living room, his phone displaying a text from an unknown number. I know where Madeline is. Tell her Ryan says hello. We have unfinished business. Blake's blood ran cold. He immediately called the hospital to increase security around Madeline's room, then phoned his head of corporate security. I need everything you can find on Ryan. Lewis, he instructed. And I need protection for 2 children and their mother. Immediately. As he ended the call, Blake noticed Harper standing in the doorway, clutching her mother's silver ring. Is Mom in trouble? She asked, her voice small, but steady. No, Blake assured her, though his heart raced. Everything's fine. Go back to sleep. But her eyes, his mother's eyes, saw right through the lie. Morning light filtered through Memorial Heart Center's premium suite as Madeline was prepped for surgery. The stark contrast between this room and the county hospital wasn't lost on her. private nurses, state-of-the-art equipment, and a view of the city skyline where her daughters were now staying in luxury. The procedure will take approximately 4 hours, Dr. Keller explained, reviewing her charts. Mr. Whitaker has arranged for updates to be sent to him throughout. Madeline nodded, still uncomfortable with Blake's involvement despite her gratitude. 10 years of fierce independence made accepting help feel like failure. When the doctor left, Blake entered with the twins, who rushed to her bedside. "Mom, our hotel has a swimming pool," Piper exclaimed, her eyes brighter than Madeline had seen in months. "And room service," Harper added, though her excitement seemed tempered by worry. She hadn't removed the silver ring, twisting it anxiously. "That sounds wonderful." Madeline managed to smile, her gaze drifting to Blake, who stood somewhat awkwardly at the foot of her bed. The casual clothes he wore, jeans and a simple sweater, made him look more like the boy she'd loved in college than the corporate titan he'd become. "Girls, could you give me a moment with your mother?" Blake asked gently. Once alone, Madeline spoke first. "Blake, if something happens during surgery—" "Don't," he interrupted. "Everything will be fine." "Please let me finish," she insisted. "If something happens, promise me you'll take care of them." The weight of her request hung between them. "Of course I will," Blake said, moving closer. "But nothing's going to happen. You're going to get through this and then we'll figure everything out together." Madeline swallowed hard. "There's something you should know before I go in. About Ryan Lewis." Blake tensed visibly. "I know about him already." "How?" "Warren ran a background check," Blake admitted, "and he sent a message last night to me." Madeline's heart monitor beeped faster. "What? What did he say?" "That he knows where you are, that you have unfinished business." Blake took her hand. "I've hired security. You're safe." "You don't understand." Madeline's voice trembled. "Ryan is obsessed. When he found out about the girls, he tried to take them, said they belonged to him. But they're not his," Blake stated rather than asked. "Of course not." Madeline looked offended. "They're yours. Ryan came later when I was desperate for help. He seemed kind at first then." She trailed off, the memories visibly painful. Blake's jaw tightened. "Why didn't you come to me? Even after what my father did?" "Pride. Fear." Madeline's eyes filled with tears. "I believed what your father said. That I would ruin your life, and after a while it seemed too late to undo the damage." A nurse entered, signaling it was time. Blake impulsively leaned down and kissed Madeline's forehead. "We'll be here when you wake up," he promised. In the waiting room, Blake found Warren, deep in conversation with the security guard he'd stationed outside Madeline's room. "What's going on?" Blake demanded. "There was an incident," Warren reported. "A man attempted to access Ms. Reed's floor claiming to be family. Security stopped him." "Ryan?" Blake growled. "Where is he now?" "Gone. Security escorted him out, but he made quite a scene." Warren hesitated. "Blake, there's something else. Your father is downstairs. He's demanding to see the twins." Blake's head snapped up. "Where are the girls?" "With your security detail in the cafeteria." Blake was already moving toward the elevator when Warren caught his arm. "Think carefully about this," Warren warned. "Victor Whitaker isn't a man who gives up easily. Whatever you're planning—" "I'm not planning anything except protecting my family," Blake cut him off. "Something I should have done 10 years ago." The elevator doors opened to reveal Victor Whitaker himself, impeccably dressed and coldly furious. "Where are my granddaughters?" Victor demanded. Blake stepped directly into his father's path. "You lost the right to call them that when you paid their mother to disappear." Father and son faced each other in the sterile hospital corridor, years of unspoken tension crystallizing into this moment. "Step aside, Blake," Victor commanded, his authoritative tone honed from decades in boardrooms. "I have a right to meet them." "You have no rights here," Blake countered, holding his ground. "You made that choice 10 years ago." Victor's expression hardened. "I've just come from an emergency board meeting. Your position as CEO has been temporarily suspended pending a vote of confidence. Blake laughed, a short, bitter sound. You think I care about that now? You should. Victor's voice lowered. Everything you've built, everything we've built, Blake corrected, means nothing compared to what I've lost. Those girls grew up without a father because of you. A nurse passing by glanced nervously at the two powerful men blocking the hallway. Victor straightened his already impeccable tie. I did what any father would do. You were too young, too ambitious. A family would have destroyed your potential. That wasn't your decision to make. Blake's composure finally cracked. You robbed me of my children. You robbed them of their father. And look at you now. Victor gestured around them. Successful, respected, wealthy beyond measure. Would any of that have happened if you'd been changing diapers in some cramped apartment? Blake stepped closer, his voice dangerously quiet. I would have had something real, something that mattered. Before Victor could respond, Harper's voice cut through their standoff. Mom's in surgery now, she announced, approaching with Piper and their security guard trailing behind. She stopped, studying Victor with unnerving intensity. Are you really our grandfather? Victor seemed momentarily disarmed by the direct question from this small, serious child wearing a familiar silver ring. I am, he confirmed, his tone softening slightly. Why haven't we met you before? Harper pressed while Piper partially hid behind her bolder twin. Victor glanced at Blake, then back to Harper. It's complicated, young lady. Because you didn't want us, Harper stated flatly. Mom said some people just can't handle families. Blake placed protective hands on both girls' shoulders. Your mother is very wise. Victor's expression shifted subtly as he truly studied his granddaughters for the first time. Blake's eyes staring back at him, Madeline's delicate features, unmistakable Whitaker determination in their posture. Perhaps, Victor finally said, I made a miscalculation. Blake recognized the closest thing to an admission of error his father would ever offer. It's too late for perhaps, Blake replied firmly. Madeline is in surgery fighting for her life. These girls have suffered enough. Whatever game you're playing with the board, leave them out of it. Victor considered this, then reached into his pocket and extracted a business card. He held it out to Harper, who hesitated before taking it. When you're ready, Victor said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. I'd like to know my granddaughters. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Blake stunned by the unexpected concession. Is he always that scary? Piper whispered, once Victor had disappeared into the elevator. Blake exhaled slowly. He's complicated. Like Mom says about you, Harper observed shrewdly. Before Blake could respond, his phone rang. Warren, with an urgent tone. Security spotted Ryan Lewis in the hospital parking garage, Warren reported. Police have been called, but he's disappeared again. Blake's blood ran cold. Ryan wasn't giving up, and Victor's unexpected retreat suddenly seemed less like concession and more like tactical withdrawal. Stay with the girls, Blake instructed the security guard. Don't let anyone near them except hospital staff that I've approved. Harper's perceptive eyes narrowed. Something's wrong. Is it Mom? No, Blake assured her, squeezing her small shoulder. Your mom is fine. I just need to take care of something. As he walked away, Blake heard Harper whisper to her sister, Adults always lie when they're scared. She wasn't wrong. 4 hours into Madeline's surgery, Blake paced the waiting room, checking his watch compulsively. The twins had finally fallen asleep on the uncomfortable hospital couch, Harper's head on Piper's shoulder, their small bodies curled together like they'd done countless times on cold sidewalks. Mr. Whitaker? Dr. Keller appeared, surgical mask hanging around his neck. The procedure was successful. We've replaced the valve and repaired the surrounding tissue. Blake exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. So she'll recover completely? With proper care and medication? Yes. She's young and surprisingly resilient despite her malnutrition and the years of strain. The doctor's expression softened. She's a fighter. Can we see her? Blake asked. She's in recovery now. Once she's stabilized, You can visit briefly. Dr. Keller glanced at the sleeping twins. She'll need to stay here at least a week, then several months of careful rehabilitation. After the doctor left, Blake gently woke the girls to share the good news. Their faces lit up with relief, though Harper's joy quickly gave way to practical concerns. Where will we stay during Mom's recovery? We can't go back to. She trailed off, not wanting to name the abandoned building they'd called home. You'll stay with me, Blake said without hesitation. Both of you. At the hotel? Piper asked. No, at my home. I have plenty of room. He smiled, trying to ease their obvious anxiety. We'll get your mother settled there too once she's released. Harper twisted the silver ring on her finger, habit Blake now recognized as her processing difficult emotions. What if your father doesn't want us there? She asked quietly. My house. My rules. Blake replied firmly. Besides, I think he's starting to come around. People don't just come around, Harper countered with the cynicism of someone far older. They want things. Blake knelt before her, meeting her eyes, his mother's eyes. You're right. Most people do want things. But sometimes, Harper, people realize they've made terrible mistakes and want to fix them. Like you? She challenged. Exactly like me, he admitted. I should have found you and your mother years ago. I should have looked harder, fought harder, but I'm here now and I'm not going anywhere. Warren appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. Blake, we need to talk, privately. In the hallway, Warren handed Blake his tablet. Security cameras caught this an hour ago. The footage showed Ryan Lewis speaking with someone near the hospital parking garage. Blake froze when he recognized the other figure, his father. What the hell? Blake hissed. They spoke for approximately 3 minutes, Warren reported clinically. Then your father handed him something, looks like an envelope, and they parted ways. Blake's mind raced. Call the police again and double the security around Madeline's room. Already done, Warren assured him. But Blake, what exactly is your father playing at? I don't know, Blake admitted, a cold dread settling in his stomach. But we're about to find out. When Blake returned to the waiting room, his phone buzzed with a text from Victor. Board meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. Your presence required. Final decision on your position. As if corporate politics mattered now. A nurse appeared to escort them to recovery, where Madeline lay connected to monitors, her face pale but peaceful. The twins approached cautiously, clearly frightened by the machinery, but desperate to be near their mother. She looks better already, Blake assured them, though the sight of Madeline so vulnerable made his chest ache. As if sensing their presence, Madeline's eyes fluttered open, immediately seeking her daughter's. My babies, she whispered, her voice rough from the breathing tube. Mom! They exclaimed in unison, each taking one of her hands. Madeline's gaze shifted to Blake, standing somewhat awkwardly behind them. Something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, relief, and something deeper that neither was ready to name. Thank you, she murmured, for taking care of them. Blake moved closer. Always. It was a promise 10 years overdue. Blake's penthouse apartment occupied the top 2 floors of a building he'd developed himself 5 years earlier. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city skyline. Modern art adorned minimalist walls, and Italian marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. It was the epitome of bachelor luxury. Beautiful, expensive, and utterly unlived in. This is all yours? Piper whispered, her small hand gripping Blake's as they stepped off the private elevator. It's bigger than our whole building. It's just space, Blake replied, suddenly self-conscious about the ostentatious wealth on display. But it has room, for everyone. Harper moved cautiously through the living room, inspecting without touching like a visitor in a museum. Where did you grow up? She asked unexpectedly. In a house outside the city, Blake answered. Much bigger than this, actually. With your scary dad, Harper stated rather than asked. Blake couldn't help smiling at her directness. Yes, with my scary dad and my mother, until she passed away when I was 12. Piper's fingers tightened around his. Your mom died too? We thought ours might. But she didn't, Blake reassured her. She's getting stronger every day. It had been 3 days since Madeline's surgery, and her recovery was progressing well. The twins had visited that morning, bright-eyed with excitement about moving into Blake's home, a stark contrast to their initial wariness. I've prepared rooms for both of you, Blake continued, leading them down a hallway. And there's a suite for your mother when she's released next week. He opened the door to a tastefully decorated bedroom. With twin beds, Warren had arranged for a decorator to transform the unused space overnight, adding colorful bedding, bookshelves, and a small desk. This is just for us? Piper asked incredulously. All yours, Blake confirmed. I thought you might want to share, for now. But there's another bedroom if you'd prefer separate spaces. Harper approached one of the beds cautiously, running her hand over the soft comforter. We've always shared, she said quietly, even when we had the apartment. Blake watched them explore their new surroundings, his heart aching at their wonder, over things most children took for granted. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper who had worked for him since he bought the penthouse. Dinner is ready, Mr. Whitaker, she announced with a warm smile for the girls. I've made mac and cheese. Warren mentioned it's a favorite. Blake checked his watch, surprised at how quickly the afternoon had passed. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. We'll be right there. As they headed toward the dining room, Blake's phone vibrated. Unknown number. Enjoying playing family man? It won't last. Those girls need a real father, not some suit who's never changed a diaper. I'll be seeing you soon. Blake's blood ran cold. He glanced at the twins, now seated at his dining table, looking both excited and overwhelmed. How had Ryan gotten his private number? His second phone, his business line, rang immediately after. Warren. Blake, there's been a breach. Warren's voice was tightly controlled. Someone accessed your personal information through the company server. Ite thinks it was an inside job. Ryan Lewis, Blake said flatly. Possibly. But he'd need help. Warren paused significantly. Someone with access codes. Blake's thoughts immediately went to his father, but he pushed them aside. Even Victor wouldn't go that far. Increase security at the penthouse, Blake instructed, keeping his voice low as he stepped away from the dining room. And have someone check on Madeline. Already done, Warren assured him. Blake, be careful. This feels calculated. After ending the call, Blake returned to find the twins happily devouring mac and cheese. Their obvious delight in such a simple pleasure made his resolve harden. He would protect them at any cost. Is something wrong? Harper asked, her perceptive eyes missing nothing. Everything's fine, Blake lied, taking his seat. Just work stuff. Harper shared a knowing look with Piper. They'd heard that excuse before. The lights suddenly went out, plunging the penthouse into darkness. Emergency lights bathed the penthouse in an eerie blue glow. Blake immediately moved to the twins, who had frozen in fear at the dinner table. It's okay, he assured them, his voice calm despite his racing heart. Probably just a power surge. The backup generator will kick in soon. But Blake knew better. The building's systems were state-of-the-art, with multiple redundancies. This was deliberate. Mrs. Chen, he called quietly. Take the girls to the panic room. The housekeeper nodded, her usually serene face now tense with worry. Come, children, she whispered, extending her hands. Piper moved immediately, but Harper hesitated. What's happening? She demanded, fear making her voice sharp. Just a precaution, Blake insisted, gently pushing her toward Mrs. Chen. Go with her. I'll be right behind you. As Mrs. Chen led the twins down the hallway, Blake retrieved the handgun he kept in a biometric safe behind a painting. He hadn't touched it in years, but tonight he was grateful for the security measure his military-trained head of security had insisted upon. His phone vibrated, a text from his security team. Intruder detected west stairwell. Police en route. ETA 4 minutes. Too long. Blake moved silently through his darkened home, years of martial arts training guiding his movements. He reached the kitchen just as he heard glass breaking from the direction of the terrace. "I know you're in here, Whitaker." Ryan's voice echoed through the space, chillingly calm. "Just want to have a little chat about my girls." "They're not yours," Blake replied, positioning himself behind a column. "You never had any claim to them." Ryan's laugh was cold, unhinged. "I was there when Madeline had nothing. Where were you? Off building skyscrapers while she scrounged for food?" Blake winced, the accusation landing like a physical blow. "I didn't know." "Convenient excuse." Ryan's voice was closer now. "But I'm not here to debate paternity. I'm here for what's owed me." "Money," Blake realized aloud. "This is about money." "Smart man. Your daddy seemed to think 100 grand would make me disappear. But seeing this place..." Ryan whistled low. "I think we need to renegotiate." Blake's grip tightened on his weapon. Victor had tried to buy Ryan off, just as he'd tried with Madeline 10 years ago. "Whatever he offered, I'll double it," Blake said, playing for time. "But you need to leave. Now." "See, that's the problem with you rich types." Ryan's voice was directly behind him now. "You think everything has a price." Blake spun around, gun raised, but too late. Ryan swung something heavy, catching Blake's arm. The gun clattered to the floor as pain exploded through Blake's shoulder. "Some things," Ryan continued, now holding the weapon himself, "are about principle." Blake backed away, assessing his options. The panic room was impenetrable once sealed, but Ryan between him and the hallway leading there. "What principle?" "You abandoned them years ago," Blake challenged. "I never abandoned them," Ryan snarled, sudden fury distorting his features. "Madeline took them. She was mine. They were mine, and she ran." The man was delusional, dangerous in a way Blake hadn't fully appreciated until this moment. "They were never yours," Blake repeated firmly. "And they're safe where you can't reach them." Ryan's smile was chilling. "You mean your fancy panic room? The one your assistant was so proud of during construction that he gave a magazine tour? I've seen the blueprints." Blake's blood ran cold. Warren. Had he been compromised or just careless? The distant wail of police sirens finally penetrated the silence. Ryan's expression hardened. "Time's up. Take me to them or I start shooting, beginning with your kneecaps." "Blake?" Harper's voice suddenly called from the hallway. "Mrs. Chen fell. She's hurt." Horror washed over Blake as Harper appeared in the doorway, freezing when she saw Ryan. "You," she whispered, her small face draining of color. Ryan turned, recognition and triumph flashing in his eyes. "Hello, Harper. Miss me?" Blake launched himself at Ryan with every ounce of strength he possessed. Time slowed as Blake collided with Ryan, his only thought protecting Harper at any cost. The impact sent them both crashing into the marble kitchen island, the gun discharging with a deafening crack. Pain exploded through Blake's side, hot and immediate, but adrenaline kept him moving. "Run!" he shouted to Harper as he grappled with Ryan for control of the weapon. The girl stood frozen for a heartbeat before disappearing down the hallway. Ryan fought with the desperate strength of a cornered animal, his elbow connecting with Blake's, jaw in a sickening crunch. "You can't have them," Ryan snarled, his eyes wild. "They're mine. They've always been mine." Blake's vision blurred from the pain, but determination kept his grip firm. This man had terrorized Madeline and the girls for years. It ended tonight. With a final surge of strength, Blake slammed Ryan's hand against the counter edge. The gun clattered to the floor just as the penthouse door burst open and police officers swarmed in, weapons drawn. "Police! Freeze!" Ryan was subdued in seconds, his face pressed against the cold marble as officers handcuffed him. Blood seeped through Blake's shirt where the bullet had grazed his side, but he ignored it, pushing past the officers toward the panic room. "Harper! Piper!" he called, his voice raw with desperation. The panic room door slid open, revealing Piper's tear-streaked face. She launched herself at Blake, wrapping small arms around his waist. "You're hurt," she sobbed, her fingers coming away red. "It's nothing," Blake assured her, wincing as he scanned the room. "Where's Harper? And Mrs. Chen?" "Here," Mrs. Chen called, weakly from the floor inside. "I tripped in the dark. Harper went to find you." "I'm here." Harper's small voice came from behind him. She stood in the hallway, shaking visibly but dry-eyed. "I saw everything. I heard the gun." Blake knelt despite the pain, opening his arms. Harper hesitated only briefly before rushing into his embrace, finally allowing herself to cry. "I was so scared," she whispered against his shoulder. "I thought he was going to hurt you like he hurt Mom." Blake held her tighter, his heart breaking at the thought of what these children had witnessed in their short lives. "Ryan can never hurt any of us again," he promised, looking between the twins. "He's going to prison for a very long time." As paramedics treated Blake's wound and police took statements, Warren arrived, his face ashen. "Blake, I swear I had no idea," he began, his eyes darting nervously to where Ryan was being escorted to a police car. "The magazine interview about the security system, I never thought." "We'll discuss it later," Blake cut him off, his tone making it clear how serious the conversation would be. Warren nodded stiffly, then handed Blake his phone. "It's the hospital. Madeline's asking for you. She saw the news alert about a shooting at your address." Blake took the phone, speaking gently to reassure Madeline that everyone was safe. He omitted the details of his injury, promising to bring the girls to see her first thing in the morning. Later, after the police had gone and Mrs. Chen had been treated for a sprained ankle, Blake sat between the twins' beds in their room. Neither wanted to sleep alone, and he couldn't bear to leave them. "Is Ryan really gone forever?" Piper asked, her voice small in the dimness. "Yes," Blake answered firmly. "The police have evidence of everything he's done. He can't hurt us anymore." Harper twisted the silver ring on her finger, a habit Blake now recognized preceded difficult questions. "You could have died protecting us," she said finally, her eyes too serious for a child. "Why?" Blake reached out, gently stilling her nervous fingers. "Because that's what fathers do, Harper. They protect their children, no matter what." "Even though you just met us?" Piper wondered. "I should have known you your whole lives," Blake answered, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Ever." For the first time since he'd found them, both girls smiled without reservation, a smile that reached their eyes and hinted at the childhood they deserved but had been denied. "Promise?" Harper pressed, holding out her pinky. Blake linked his finger with hers, then Piper's. "Promise." Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital windows as Madeline sat propped against pillows, her face brightening when the twins burst into her room. "Mom!" they cried in unison, carefully climbing onto her bed with newfound awareness of her fragility. "My babies," Madeline whispered, holding them close, her eyes meeting Blake's over their heads. Her breath caught at the sight of his bandaged torso visible beneath his partially buttoned shirt. "You're hurt." "Just a graze," Blake assured her, moving closer to her bedside. "Everything's fine now." But everything wasn't fine. Not yet. After sending the twins to the cafeteria with a nurse for ice cream, Blake sat beside Madeline and recounted the previous night's events, watching her face pale as he described Ryan's attack. "This is exactly what I feared," she whispered, fingers clutching the hospital blanket. "Ryan was obsessed with the idea they were his. That's why I kept running." Her eyes filled with tears. "I never should have let you get involved." Blake took her hand gently. "You didn't let me do anything, Maddie. I chose this. Chose them. Chose you. Ryan is gone, locked away where he can't reach any of us. It's over. But at what cost?" Her gaze lingered on his injury. "You could have been killed, but I wasn't," Blake countered softly. "And for the first time in 10 years, I feel alive. Those girls, our girls, Madeline repeated, the words still strange on her tongue after years of solitary parenting. "It's hard to believe. This is real. That you're here, that they're safe." "It's real," Blake assured her. "And there's something else we need to discuss." He explained how the board had voted unanimously to remove him as CEO following his public distraction and absence. His father had orchestrated the entire coup, believing Blake would come crawling back once he lost everything he'd worked for. Madeline's face fell. "Blake, I'm so sorry. Your career is just a career," he finished firmly. "I've already started paperwork for a new development company. Smaller, focused on affordable family housing." His eyes held hers. "The kind of homes that might have helped you and the girls." Madeline stared at him in wonder. "You're really serious about this change?" "Dead serious," Blake confirmed. "I've missed 10 years with my daughters. I've missed you. I won't waste another day on things that don't matter." A knock at the door interrupted them as Dr. Keller entered with Madeline's chart. "Good news, Ms. Reed. Your recovery is progressing faster than expected. We can discharge you in 3 days, instead of 7, provided you have proper care at home." "She does," Blake answered immediately. "Everything's arranged." After the doctor left, Madeline turned to Blake, vulnerability evident in her expression. "I can't just move into your penthouse. It's too much, too fast." "I thought you might say that," Blake replied with a small smile. "Which is why I've been looking at houses. Something with a yard near good schools." "Blake, just look at the options," he urged, producing his tablet. "No pressure, no decisions today. But the girls deserve stability, and you deserve a real home." As they scrolled through property listings, the twins returned, ice cream evidence smeared around their mouths. They climbed onto Blake's lap without hesitation, pointing excitedly at houses on the screen. "This one has a tree house," Piper exclaimed. "This one's near a park," Harper added thoughtfully. Watching them, Madeline felt something shifting in her chest, a wall crumbling, a future opening. For 10 years she'd survived day by day, never daring to plan, to hope. Now, impossibly, she was discussing homes with the man she'd never stopped loving, while their daughters dreamed of treehouses and parks. "I'm scared," she admitted softly, when the girls became distracted by a movie playing on the room's television. "Of what?" Blake asked. "Of believing in this? In us. In happiness." Madeline's voice broke slightly. "Every time I've let myself hope, it's been taken away." Blake took her hand, his thumb tracing the familiar spot where his grandmother's ring had once rested. The ring Harper now wore as a talisman. "Not this time," he promised. "This time I'm not letting go." Outside the window, the city continued, its relentless pace, but in that hospital room, time seemed suspended, holding the fragile beginning of a family finally finding its way home. 3 months later, autumn leaves carpeted the lawn of a Victorian-style home in the city's historic district. It wasn't ostentatious by Whitaker standards, but with 4 bedrooms, a spacious backyard, and walking distance to the city's best school, it was perfect for a family rebuilding itself from fragments. Inside, Blake adjusted his tie nervously, an unusual gesture for a man who had once commanded boardrooms without hesitation. Today wasn't about business, though. Today was about forever. "You look handsome," Harper declared, appearing in his bedroom doorway. She wore a blue dress that matched her eyes, his mother's eyes. And for the first time in Blake's memory, her finger was bare of the silver ring. "Thank you." Blake smiled, kneeling to her level. "And you look beautiful. Where's your sister?" "Helping Mom with her dress," Harper replied, "and trying not to mess up her hair." Blake nodded, his heart quickening at the thought of Madeline preparing just down the hall. 3 months of patient rebuilding had brought them here, each day adding another layer of trust, another shared moment, another step toward healing. "Are you nervous?" Harper asked with her characteristic directness. "Terrified," Blake admitted, with a small laugh. "Why?" "You already know she's going to say yes." Harper's confidence was absolute. "Sometimes the things we want most are the scariest," Blake explained, straightening her dress collar, "because they matter so much." Harper considered this, then reached into her pocket. "Mom asked me to give you this." She opened her small palm to reveal the silver ring, his grandmother's ring, that had traveled from his hand to Madeline's, to Harper's, and now back to him. She said it's completed the circle, Harper explained solemnly. Whatever that means. Blake took the ring, emotion tightening his throat. It means everything is finally where it belongs. Downstairs, the small gathering of guests waited in the living room, transformed today with white flowers and ribbons. No elaborate wedding venues for Madeline. She had wanted something intimate, meaningful, in the home they now shared. Victor Whitaker stood, somewhat awkwardly near the window, his presence a surprise even to Blake. 3 weeks earlier he had appeared at their front door, looking older and less imposing than Blake remembered. "I'd like to know my granddaughters," he had said simply, echoing his words from the hospital. The path to reconciliation wasn't smooth. Too many years of manipulation and control had created deep fissures, but Victor was trying, bringing books instead of extravagant gifts, listening more than speaking when he visited. Now he nodded to Blake as he descended the stairs, a gesture that conveyed more than words could have. Mrs. Chen directed the small catering team from the kitchen, having refused to attend as a guest. "Family takes care of family," she had insisted, though she had accepted a significant raise and the title of household manager. Warren was notably absent. His indirect role in Ryan's attack had been the final breach of trust. The parting had been professional but absolute. Blake took his position before the small arch of flowers where a judge, a friend from law school, waited to officiate. Music began, and Piper appeared first, carefully dropping rose petals with intense concentration. Then, framed in the doorway, stood Madeline. Her simple white dress skimmed her now healthy figure, her honey blonde hair falling in soft waves around shoulders that no longer carried the weight of the world alone. In her hands, she held a small bouquet of wildflowers, the same kind that had grown on the university campus where they'd first met 15 years ago. Their eyes met across the room and everything else faded away. This woman who had survived abandonment, poverty, and heartbreak now walked toward him with a smile that held no reservations, no fear, only love. When she reached him, Blake took her hands, feeling the absence of the silver ring, knowing what would soon replace it. "You found me," Madeline whispered so only he could hear. "I should never have lost you," he answered simply. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, their vows written from hearts that understood both love and loss. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Blake slipped a new ring onto Madeline's finger, platinum with 3 diamonds, representing their past, present, and future. Harper and Piper cheered louder than anyone, rushing forward to embrace, their parents in a family hug that completed a circle broken 10 years before. Later, as guests enjoyed champagne and cake in the garden, Blake found Madeline standing alone on the porch, watching their daughters play tag around ancient oak trees. "Having second thoughts, Mrs. Whitaker?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Not a single one," she replied, leaning back against him. "Though it still feels like a dream sometimes, that we found our way back here, that the girls are happy that we're together." "Not a dream," Blake assured her, his lips brushing her temple. "Just the life we were always meant to have." Madeline turned in his arms, her expression suddenly serious. "When I was at my lowest, sleeping in shelters with 2 hungry babies, I used to imagine you finding us. It seemed impossible then. I'm sorry it took so long," Blake said, the familiar ache of lost years tugging at his heart. "No more apologies," Madeline insisted. "We're here now. That's what matters." From the garden, Harper called for them to come see the fort she and Piper had built with their grandfather's help. Victor Whitaker, ruthless business tycoon, now kneeling in grass stains helping construct a hideaway of branches and blankets. Who would have thought? Madeline laughed, taking Blake's hand as they walked toward their family. Blake squeezed her fingers, feeling the new ring against his palm. Sometimes life gives us second chances. We just have to be brave enough to take them. As the autumn sun began to set, casting golden light across their garden, Blake looked at the family he'd nearly lost, the wife he'd found again, the daughters he was finally coming to know, even his father slowly learning what truly mattered. Some might call it fate, others luck, but Blake knew better. This was a choice. 1,000 choices made by imperfect people trying to love each other better than before. And in the end, those choices had brought them here, to this moment, to this home, to this love that had survived against impossible odds. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was theirs. And this time, nothing would tear them apart. What a powerful story, isn't it? Here at Unwritten Lives, every video is created with great care to touch your heart and bring meaningful reflections on life. We'd love to know, what did this story mean to you? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We truly enjoy reading your messages. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this take days to create, and your support encourages us to keep bringing you inspiring and heartfelt content. Thank you for being part of our community. See you in the next video.